Hey everyone, it's Jen. Welcome back to Yarn Purpose. Today I have another designer chat for you. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about attending the industry trade show for the National Needle Arts Association. Hey everyone, welcome back. Like I said in the intro, I want to talk a little bit about attending an industry trade show. And so for me specifically as a knit and crochet designer, I am currently attending the National Needle Arts Association, TNNA's industry trade show. There are other industry trade shows that I know other designers attend. This has just been the one that I've been attending for the last few years. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my experience with it and just maybe give you some like tips or just sort of share my experience. So if you're attending for the first time, any kind of industry trade show, you sort of just know what my experience has been. So the one thing I just want to say is that it can be very overwhelming, and especially if you are like me and an introvert, that it can be very hard to be, 3, 4, 5 days sometimes at a trade show, talking to a lot of people, meeting so many new people, making all these connections. It can be very overwhelming. And so I just want to say, first of all, you don't have to talk to everybody. What I like to do is before the trade show, I like to try to make a couple of appointments ahead of time if I can, to talk to some different people about do they need design support? Sometimes I've talked to magazine editors or different publishing companies about different things they're working on. So don't be afraid if you see somebody on Instagram or Facebook or you get their newsletter and you know that they're going to be at the trade show, sending them an email beforehand, trying to set up an appointment sort of in that email, establishing why you want to meet with them, and try to get appointments that way. I find that I feel a lot more calm throughout the weekend if I know I have a couple of appointments to go to. I don't feel so overwhelmed, who am I going to talk to? What am I going to do? So that's just one thing that I found has helped me. Also, don't feel like you have to, like I said, talk to everybody. I don't necessarily always spend the entire weekend, every hour that the trade show is open at the trade show. Sometimes I do have a booth. This year I'm going to have a booth for one day. So that day, I'll be there from before it opens till after it closes. But other days, if I'm just walking the market floor and, talking to different people, finding out about new products and things like that, I don't necessarily spend the whole day there. One day I might go in the morning and then after lunch, go find a quiet spot to knit and then hang out with my friends, or sometimes I'll go to my hotel room and take a nap because, as an introvert, I sort of need that quiet downtime. And then maybe the next day, maybe I don't go until a little bit later in the day. Don't feel like you have to be there for every single waking moment. I know that when you're there, you're trying to make all these connections and stuff, but if it's gonna just burn you out for the weekend, that's just not gonna do you any good. So don't be afraid to take a break, and you can always, it's just in a way, it's like going to a regular convention, and that you can always find somebody to knit and crochet with. So if you do need to take a break, don't feel like you you have to be talking to people the entire weekend. And then finally, the thing I wanted to say is that sometimes, especially as designers, it's hard to say, is it worth it to go to a trade show, particularly the TNNA trade show? And to that, I just say, it's really hard to measure. Sometimes I leave a show and I know I have booked these teaching gigs. I have booked this with this publisher. I've, talked to this yarn company, and I'm definitely doing, this design or 2 designs, whatever, for them. But that's not always the case. Sometimes it takes talking to people a few times at these shows to sort of establish that connection to then work together in the future. So I just feel over time, my experience at TNNA is much different because now I do know more people just by going. And so I think that that's helped my business to grow, even though sometimes I walk away and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get this amount of, X number of dollars from this, X number of dollars from this, X number of dollars from that. and then decide yes or no it was worth it. You know, like I think especially for designers it can be hard to try, if you try to measure it that way. I think, you know, sometimes the answer is going to be no, it wasn't worth it if you're just trying to look at financial numbers. And I get it, like we're doing this for a job, so it is about finances, but you also just have to remember that sometimes a connection you made could pay off down the road. You just don't know, you know? So sometimes with some of my teaching gigs, it's taken you know, a few times of me handing out my teaching brochure and talking to the different yarn stores in order to have them, you know, bring me in, you know, because like they're really busy too. They're talking to a lot of people too. So, you know, some years I might fit into their schedule, some years I might not, you know, and not everybody's going to want you to teach for them, but you know, it's just sort of continuing to establish those connections that I think really pays off. So that's really all I wanted to say, is that I know that it can be overwhelming going to a trade show. I decided to talk about this month because the National Needle Arts trade show is in a few weeks. It's in mid-June. So yeah, I just wanted to like briefly talk about sort of my experience and just like remind you, especially I think a lot of us designers aren't introverts, not all of us, but you know, sort of talking to people over the years, a lot of us do work at home alone. We're used to our alone time. So I just really wanted to touch sort of on like how to make it a little more successful, especially if you are an introvert like me. So if you are a designer or, you know, have another job within the industry and you are going to be at the trade show, please let me know. I'd love to meet you. And also, I'd love to hear what else you'd like to know about in these designer chats. I've been running through quite a few ideas over the last few months, but if you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. I hope that everybody has a great week and happy crafting, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.